My name's Molly. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Purpose, where we talk about that very thing. What is our purpose on this earth? Why are we here? Well, I think my purpose is the exact same thing as your purpose. We all have the same reason for being here, and that is to get to know God better, to learn how to love Him more, to hang out with Him. And when we do all of that, we just naturally start loving other people here on earth better. So our purpose, love God, love each other. So simple. Not at all simple. It's the hardest thing on earth. At least it is for me. I think it's really difficult. But God knew that. He knew we'd have trouble with it, so He left us a roadmap, the Bible. He left us directions. All right, all you have to do is read the Bible. Well, that's not always an easy thing to do. It can be a really hard read. And it's not like a Nora Roberts book where you just start at the beginning and read it to the end and you're done. The Bible is not a chronological book. It's not start at the beginning and read to the end. It's more like a library that has lots of categories of books. There's poetry and prose and wisdom, and then there's essential stories, and then there's just supplemental reading that say, hey, yeah, while this was going on, this was also happening. So it makes it really confusing. We're going to break that down and hopefully make it very easy and relatable. So which Bible do you use? Which one is the right one? That's a toughie. Go into a bookstore. Tell them you want a Bible. They'll take you to that section. There's dozens and dozens of Bibles. And then you could break it down. You could say, I want a Protestant Bible. There's dozens of those. All right, I want a Catholic Bible. Guess what? Dozens of those. Which one is right? Which one are we supposed to have? Trick question. They're all right. They're all right. The Protestant Bible is not better or worse than the Catholic Bible. The Catholic Bible is not better or worse than the Protestant Bible. They're both right. Well, how can that be? How can a Protestant Bible be the same as the Catholic Bible? Wouldn't they just be one Bible? Yeah, there's lots of different little versions where the translation's a little off, but let me tell you the big difference between the Catholic Bible and the Protestant Bible. And then you do your research. You find out what the difference is. Just be careful, because the internet can have a lot of lies about both Bibles, and you want to make sure you're going to a good source. And then go to the source. Ask God. Pray on it. Find out which Bible is right for you. But let me break it down real simple and real short into the difference between the Protestant Bible and the Catholic Bible. So thousands and thousands of years ago, God had what the Bible calls His chosen people. They were the Jewish people. Sometimes the Bible calls them Israel, just to make things confusing. So you had the Jewish people, and then you had the pagan people who didn't believe in God. They had lots and lots of gods. But the Jewish people believed in the one true God. And so at some point, they decided, we need to start writing these stories down about what God's doing for us, from the Garden of Eden in Genesis to Noah to the ancient fathers like Abraham and Isaac. So they started to write it down. And they didn't have notebooks or computers. They wrote it on big, long scrolls that were probably made of leather or something like that. And they wrote down the Word of God on these scrolls. And then they just unroll them and read the different stories. So they could get out the Genesis scroll and read that. And then they could get out the Noah scroll and read that. And at some point, they decided to preserve them. And they put like tar on them and rolled them up and put them in these little tile canisters and put them in a cave. And they were in that cave for thousands and thousands of years. And then you are not going to believe this, but in 1947, this kid, an Arab kid, was out looking for his goat. A kid was looking for a kid. That's funny. Anyway, he's looking for his goat, and he went into a cave, and he found all those scrolls. They were still there. The earliest version of the Torah. The Torah is what the ancient Jews called that collection of scrolls, their Bible. It was a Torah. So anyway, that Torah was written in Hebrew, and it's what all the Jewish people would read, all their holy days and things. They'd go to temple and they'd read from the Torah. And that happened all the way up until the Jewish people were conquered by the Assyrians, and they were taken into captivity, and they weren't allowed to go to their temple. They weren't allowed to read their Torah. And eventually, I think it was the Greeks, conquered Assyria, and they got to go back home. But just like with us, if you get away from reading the Bible and you stop going to church, you're going to fall away from God. Your relationship with him is not going to be as strong. And that's what happened to the Jewish people. They fell away from God. Their relationship wasn't as strong. They forgot their purpose. Love God, love each other. They forgot. So the leaders decided, we got to get these people back. We've got to build up their relationship with God again. It's our reason for being here. So they decided to transcribe the Torah into Greek, which is what all the people spoke then, so they could read it. They wanted everybody to be able to read the Torah. Everybody spoke Greek. They needed to rewrite it in Greek. So when they were rewriting it, which was just copying it down, they weren't like making up their own story. They took the original Torah and just copied it down. But they did add 7 more books. The original ancient Torah had 39 books in it, 39 different stories. The new one that they were copying down had 46 because time had passed. God did more things in there, so they added more stuff to it. So jump ahead hundreds of years after, excuse me, they transcribed that Bible into Greek, or the Torah into Greek. Hundreds of years have passed, and now a little baby's born named Jesus. And you know what happened. He grew up and he had this radical, wild idea that anybody could know and love God, and that everybody can have a relationship with him, whether you're Jewish or not, and that everybody gets to go to heaven. You can all know God and love him and go to heaven. Well, the Jewish leaders of the time did not like that crazy talk. They were called Pharisees. And the Pharisees decided, ooh, this is dangerous stuff. So you know what they did? They murdered Jesus. They thought, we'll just get rid of him and everybody will come back to us and we'll go back to life as it was. Well, that didn't happen. They murdered Jesus, and his followers just grew and grew and grew. The apostles spread the word, and this group of people started to come together and learn more about God and love him more, and they called themselves Christians. And that would later form the Catholic Church. And so the Pharisees didn't like this, and they wanted to separate themselves from the Christians. The Christians were using the Torah that had the 46 books, the newer version. That's the Torah that Jesus would have read when he was a kid. It's what all the apostles read, and it's what was used with the Christians. It's what they read. It's what they learned from. Well, the Pharisees wanted to distance themselves, so they went back to the ancient Torah that had 39 books in it. Those 39 books were in this newer Torah that these very early Christians were using. Theirs just had some supplemental reading. It had a few more books that weren't essential to the story. It was just a little extra reading. So that old Torah that the Jews went back to is what's still read in temple today by the Jews. So now we've got this group of Christians that are using that newer, more modern version of the Torah with the 46 books in it. And for like 400 years almost, not quite, nearly 400 years, the Catholic Church just grew and grew and grew and grew. And they decided, we got to get this stuff down in writing. We need to write what happened when Jesus was here. And the apostles had written down their thoughts and their experiences with Jesus. And a lot of his followers wrote down their experiences with Jesus. And so the Pope of the Catholic Church got together this big committee, and they went through all those writings, and they prayed and they prayed and they prayed, and they asked God to guide them to what should be in the New Testament that they were writing. It was new. So it took them like 10 years or so, but they got it down. They narrowed it down to what they thought were in divinely inspired writings, and that became the New Testament. What did the Torah become? The Old Testament. We have the New Testament, and the Old Testament. And the Old Testament, in that early Catholic Bible, was exactly the Torah that Jesus had read when he was on earth. It had the 46 books in it. And so life went on, the Catholic Church grew, and more people were becoming Christian. And like what happens all the time, there are bad people everywhere. There's bad people in every group. Every religion has got people that aren't necessarily helping it out. And the same was true with the Catholic Church then. They had corrupt popes. They had corrupt priests. They had bad things going on. And the church with a capital C was perfect and beautiful, and it's what the apostles created after Jesus' death. But the church with a little c, oh, it was a hot mess. And a man named Martin Luther decided, this is crazy town. I am breaking off from the Catholic Church. I am not going to be associated with it. I'm going to start my own religion. And he called it Lutheran, the Lutheran religion. And since then, oh man, it's broken up into like 45,000 different little religions after that. Once Martin Luther broke off, then lots of people said, yeah, I don't agree with you, I'm going to start this. And yeah, I don't agree with that, I'm going to start that. But anyway, Martin Luther wanted to separate himself from the Catholic Church. He didn't want to be associated with the Catholic Church. He went back to the ancient Torah, the ancient Old Testament with the 39 books. And that's what's in the Protestant Bible today. It's that ancient Torah, or the ancient Old Testament, where the Catholic Bible has the newer Torah, the newer Old Testament that they would have read in Jesus' time, that was original to the Catholic Church. So that's the only difference. It's not that Martin Luther just started cutting stuff out of the Bible. Well, he kind of did in the beginning, but that's a long story. But it now is back to that original ancient Torah. And it's not like Catholics just started throwing stuff in the Bible. They didn't. It's what was added hundreds of years before Jesus. That's the big difference in the Bibles. People think that there's so many divisions among people, and there's just lies out there about every side of everything. And I think people are basically much more similar than we are different. Protestants and Catholics, not that different. We all love God and we all need to love each other. And it doesn't matter for this YouTube channel which Bible you have. They're all good. Every translation's going to be a little bit different, but the story is going to be exactly the same. And from the time the early Catholics, and I think it was like 387 AD, when they made that New Testament, it has never changed since that day. Thousands of years, 2,000 years have gone by. It's never changed, divinely inspired. So I hope you like this little history lesson. And I hope that as you go throughout your day today, you just ask yourself, how can I get to know God better today? How can I love him a little bit better today? And ask him. Just say, hey, God, how can I love you better today? Show me the way. And he'll do it for you. Have a terrific day, everyone. Bye-bye.